This week on The Watchman, we're just weeks away from the Christians United for Israel Washington Summit, and the one and only Pastor John Hagee is here with a call to action for the church for such a time as this.
If there was ever a time we needed to stand up and speak up and be totally united and demonstrate our unswerving support of the Jewish people and the state of Israel, it's right now.
Plus, top Middle East analyst Jonathan Schanzer joins us to break down all the latest news out of the world's most complex and chaotic region and why it matters to you. It's The Watchman. It's Christians United for Israel only on TBN. And welcome to The Watchman. We are back here in Washington, D.C. for part two of our special two-part series from the nation's capital. Now, if you missed part one last week, Congressman Mike Gallagher joined us and gave us a great overview of the national security threats facing America and Israel. We also told you about the rise of anti-Semitism, including right here in the United States, and how our team at CUFI is fighting back and how you can be a part of it. Well, one of the reasons our team at CUFI is here in Washington, D.C. this week is for the annual Christian Solidarity event right here in the nation's capital at the Israeli Embassy. Our founder and chairman, the one and only Pastor John Hagee, was the keynote speaker at the event, and he brought some moral clarity as he's known to do. Take a look.
As we gather here today, the dark clouds and vicious winds of anti-Semitism are blowing across America and the world. The Bible teaches us that Israel is a light to the nations and that we are the light to the world. Let your light so shine before men that they may see your good works and glorify your Father which is in heaven. Let us shine this bright light of truth. Christians United for Israel is not a paper-shuffling organization. We are designed for attack and continuous pursuit of truth. We will always use the power of prayer and continue to pray for the peace of Jerusalem and for the Word, because the Word of God commands it. When confronted with the darkness of anti-Semitism, we will not cower. We're not going to run for cover. We're going to stand up. We're going to speak up. Let us stand together until the power of our persistence and the light conquers the darkness of anti-Semitism.
Folks, the team at the Israeli Embassy always does a great job with the Christian Solidarity event. And as a Christian, it's great to kind of feel the love and the appreciation from Israel and the Jewish people for the hard work we're doing here at Christians United for Israel. Well, after that event at the Israeli Embassy, I had a chance to sit down with the one and only Pastor John Hagee and CUFI Action Fund Chairwoman Sandra Hagee Parker to talk about our upcoming CUFI Washington Summit and why you need to come and join us here in Washington, D.C. The dates are July 7th, 8th, and 9th, and as Pastor Hagee and Sandy lay out, the stakes could not be higher for Israel, for America, and for the church. Take a look. Well, Pastor Sandy, great to have you back with us here on The Watchman Show.
We're delighted to be with you, Eric.
Yeah, and what an important time to have you here in Washington, D.C. We've seen a horrific anti-Semitic attack in San Diego, a deadly attack recently. Pittsburgh just a few months ago. Even the New York Times with these openly anti-Semitic cartoons. Pastor, we have a serious problem here.
We have a very serious problem in America. All Christians need to recognize that anti-Semitism is sin, and as sin, it damns the soul. Jesus said, "Inasmuch as you've done it unto the least of these, my brethren," speaking of the Jewish people, my brethren, "you've done it unto me." We have in America right now anti-Semitism in the church with replacement theology, replacement theology is that the church has taken the place of Israel in the economy of God. That's a false doctrine. It's plainly wrong. We have anti-Semitism in our universities, with college and university professors brainwashing our children against the Jewish people.
Right here on Capitol Hill, I think of Ilan Omar, Rashida Tlaib, these freshman members of Congress.
Anti-Semitism is not a Jewish problem. It's everybody's problem.
That's what we do here at Christians United for Israel, Sandy. What are we doing right now? And talk about God's timing with our Shine the Light initiative. How are we fighting back against anti-Semitism? And how can people at home join us and help us?
Israel is a light unto the nations. We are a light unto the world. The Bible is very clear. The only way to conquer darkness is to shine the light. You don't groan the darkness, you turn up the light. And that's what we're going to do. We are going to shine a light on anti-Semitism wherever it may be found in all of its forms. If it's on the campus through BDS, if it's in government through retweeting of tropes or bad policy, if it's in our newspapers and these cartoons, we will not keep silent. We are going to mobilize. We are going to take action. We're not going to let it slide.
The anti-Semites are scurrying out from under their rocks right now. They're being very public about it. Thankfully, our government right now, the current administration, has been a great and staunch friend and ally of Israel and the Jewish people. We recently had President Trump announcing that he recognized, that the U.S. recognized Israel's sovereignty over the Golan Heights.
Absolutely.
Just the latest of just a litany, a great litany of pro-Israel legislation and announcements from this administration. Talk about how the U.S.-Israel relationship has never been stronger than it is right now.
It's never been this strong in the history of the United States of America. You take the historical fact that Harry Truman recognized the existence of the State of Israel in 11 minutes after they declared statehood.
1948.
And since that act, presidents have promised to move the embassy. They've promised, and failed. Donald Trump came to office making promises, and he kept those promises. He has moved the embassy from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem. We weren't giving the Jewish people special treatment. We have put our embassy in nations that are run by thugs and despots. We put our embassy there now to honor Israel because they are truly our friend. We are giving them the equal recognition. It wasn't something special. And now he has given the Golan Heights the prerogative of being called the sovereign property of Israel.
Pastor, such a strategic region there, the Golan. Whoever has that has the high ground in any future conflict between Israel and its enemies.
Because we have Iran and Russia and Hamas and Hezbollah in the mix at one time, and they have the capacity of shooting rockets for many miles away, now the world can know that the moment a rocket pierces the sovereign land of Israel, which is in the Golan Heights, the war is on. And America is now clearly standing side by side with Israel. And whenever the president made that declaration, the nations of the world set up and said, the price of attacking Israel just went sky high.
We're approaching anti-Semitism on two tracks here at CUFI. Shine the light, I would say more at the grassroots, you would say, but also right here in Washington, D.C., where it matters with legislation. Tell us about the Anti-Semitism Awareness Act, which you have testified about right here on Capitol Hill, why it's so important, and what we are doing here at CUFI to help spearhead it.
Yes. The Anti-Semitism Awareness Act is very simple. It's basically a law that will be adopted and applied to the Department of Education that says if a student on a campus in the United States of America experiences harassment, which, Eric, as you know, every report that comes out shows these anti-Semitic incidents on schools are growing by the year. The trajectory just continues to rise. Do you know how many incidences of anti-Semitism under this particular article in the Department of Education in the Civil Rights Act? How many have been prosecuted?
I don't think I want to know.
Zero.
Zero.
There have been zero. This law says if somebody is harassed, then you can consider the State Department's definition of anti-Semitism, which is what we use to measure anti-Semitism globally. You can look at that definition, apply it, and say, well, was this just harassment, or was this harassment because they were Jewish? That's it. This is not controversial. This is very easy. It says, if you're not prosecuting these cases, you either don't know what anti-Semitism is, or you're ignoring it.
Coming up, learn how CUFI is making a difference for Israel and America in Washington, D.C., and how you can help. Don't move.
Every year, the Christians United for Israel Washington Summit gets bigger, better, and more powerful.
I have faith that with God's help, and with the men and women gathered here, with all those who cherish Israel, and with President Donald Trump in the White House, the best days for Israel and for America together are yet to come.
What's amazing about Christians United for Israel is not just the power of your voice, it's also the importance of the cause you have dedicated your voice to. Standing up against this global pressure campaign on Israel and the Jewish people goes to the heart of our friendship and the heart of America. And the tip of the spear is Christians United for Israel.
Join Pastor Hagee and top leaders from Israel and America this July for the 2019 CUFI Washington Summit. Register now at www.cufi.org/summit.
Pastor, Sandy kind of touched on this. She mentioned BDS earlier. I see two strains in the anti-Israel, the enemies of Israel, I guess you would say. Iran, the head of the snake, we've called it, but BDS as well, which is non-violent, but it eventually leads to the same end game, the destruction of Israel. Talk about how we at CUFI are battling against these various strains, the violent and the non-violent, of anti-Israel activity.
BDS is economic anti-Semitism. BDS is an effort to destroy the economy of the State of Israel. If you can destroy or cripple the State of Israel, then you have done with the dollar what you couldn't do with bombs and jets. And it has been a very sophisticated effort. We, as Christians United for Israel, have gone from state government to state government, passing laws that say to this effect: no company that embraces BDS can do business in this state. We passed that in the state of Texas. Arkansas passed a great law. We have 22 states that have passed anti-BDS legislation.
We have these enemies, we have these threats, but here's the good news. We have 5.6 million Christians energized, activated. You're going to see it all, folks, at our Washington Summit, July 7th, 8th, and 9th, just a few short weeks away. Sandy, why does everyone need to come? And what will they see? What will they be a part of at our CUFI Washington Summit?
Why we love it when our members get together: a community. The Bible says, how good is it when brothers and sisters dwell together in unity, and where there's unity there will be a blessing. And when you get all of those people in one room, it's like a Super Bowl party for the nation of Israel, Jews and Christians coming together. There's just so much energy to feed off each other, to encourage each other.
Thousands. Shoulder to shoulder, packing the convention center.
Shoulder to shoulder, that's right. And you know what it says in the Word of God about standing shoulder to shoulder. It doesn't mean that you have some power. It means that you have all power. And we stand with our Christian brothers and sisters shoulder to shoulder. First, we edify ourselves. We have the Night to Honor Israel, where you're going to see Ambassador David Friedman. You're going to have other speakers from the administration that will be named that we can't mention just yet. And the next day we are going to march soldiers in this army on Capitol Hill.
That's a key, Sandy. We're going to have great speakers, including the gentleman to my right at the Night to Honor Israel. But that Tuesday, our lobbying day, our CUFI lobbying day on Capitol Hill, folks, what a unique opportunity to get face-to-face with your elected representatives and lobby for strong pro-Israel and pro-American legislation. Sandy, I think that's one of the unique things.
That's very unique. And so often, Eric, you know, you speak all over the nation doing Nights to Honor Israel and educating the members of CUFI, and they want to do more.
Yeah.
They pray for the peace of Jerusalem. They have these events in their church. They say, how can I do more? This is a way where you can quite literally put your faith to practice.
Up next, the Middle East made simple. We break down the world's most unpredictable region with top expert Jonathan Schanzer. Stick around.
The silence of millions of Christian bystanders during Hitler's rise to power emboldened the Nazis to carry out their evil extermination plan against the Jewish people. Today, anti-Semitism is on the rise again, and some are even claiming the Holocaust never happened. As Christians, we must not be silent in response to these lies.
To see evil and not call it evil is evil. Not to act is to act. Not to speak is to speak.
This month, CUFI is offering a powerful new mini-book, The Sin of Silence, which documents the first-hand accounts of both the perpetrators and witnesses of the Holocaust. As the generation that experienced the Holocaust disappears, we must keep the memories of these witnesses alive to ensure that such a horror never happens again. Call Christians United for Israel at 210-477-4714 or go to kufi.org/silence to receive your copy of The Sin of Silence when you support CUFI with a gift of any amount.
And welcome back to part 2 of our special 2-part Watchman series from right here in Washington, D.C. One of the leading voices here in D.C. when it comes to national security issues, to the Middle East, to the strong U.S.-Israel relationship is the Foundation for Defense of Democracies, or FDD. Now, Jonathan Schanzer is the Vice President for Research at FDD. And folks, if the Middle East is confusing to you, if this complex region kind of seems over your head sometimes, Jonathan Schanzer is your man. Take a look. Tell us where we're at right now with that Iran threat. The U.S. obviously increasing sanctions, seems to be putting more pressure on. Talk about Iran's response, which isn't a pleasant one, I know, and how they continue to try to expand across the region.
Absolutely. Well, first of all, it's important to note that when we got out of the nuclear deal last year, we did so because there were issues that had been unresolved when we had entered into the deal. And notably, that's terrorism, it's the destabilization of regimes across the Middle East, it's the support for the Assad regime in Syria, which has murdered, untold numbers, at least 500,000 according to rough estimates. I mean, nobody knows exactly. On top of that, we've got the cyber activity that we know they're involved in, you've got the human rights violations at home. Things have been bad, and so there was a reason why
the ballistic missile program as well.
Yeah, popping off missiles on a regular basis, still developing them. And so the Trump administration finally made the decision last year to pull out of the deal. The Europeans haven't pulled out, so they have left a lifeline open to the Iranians. But what has happened here is that we have reimposed a lot of those sanctions that we had on Iran in the first place. And so they're beginning to feel the squeeze. Financially, they're beginning to feel more isolated. This is all good news because it means that we're putting more pressure on the Iranians to halt this activity. But in the process, they continue to support the terrorist regimes around the region. And then on top of that, they are now threatening to close off the Strait of Hormuz, which is where something like 40% of the world's oil travels through. So it is, we're still in a standoff with the Iranians. I don't think we have any clarity about where things are going at this moment, but what we do have is a maximum pressure campaign imposed by the Trump administration with the goal of changing Iran's behavior.
Can you talk about how the Iranian regime and its proxy Hezbollah have kind of entrenched themselves along Israel's northern border?
Absolutely. I think the first thing to note here is that the Iranians are establishing what we call a land bridge, Shiite crescent, whatever you want to call it, but it's stretching from western Iran into Syria, through Iraq, into Syria, into Lebanon. And the idea here is so that Iran would have kind of a network of roads where they're able to bring material, basically, the things that they need to carry out war against Israel or against others for that matter. And so they have largely succeeded in connecting these roads. So now what they have are two fronts. One that is well established in Lebanon, and that is a front that has about 150,000 rockets facing south at Israel right now. On top of that, there were attempts to build these tunnels that would connect southern Lebanon into Israeli territory. The Israelis have thwarted the tunnel problem. They still have the problem of all these rockets that are facing south at them right now, and it will overwhelm their defenses. They know it.
Even with Iron Dome, this is just too much.
150,000 rockets is a huge number. Think about what 5,000 rockets did back in 2014 and how they were threatening Ben Gurion Airport. Now imagine what that looks like, where you multiply that, by
Nightmare scenario.
Nightmare scenario for the Israelis. So that's the one front. The other front is in Syria, and there we've seen actually Israeli strikes. The number that we know of inside Syria has been more than 200 over the last year or so.
Wow.
They have hit primarily missiles and other ordnance that we believe were on their way to Lebanon to augment what was happening inside Hezbollah territory. But also some of this material was designed to create a separate front in Syria to be able to launch a two-front war against Israel from the north. Israelis now no longer talk about the next Hezbollah war, they talk about the next northern war.
You've done a lot of great work on kind of highlighting the radical behavior of President Erdogan of Turkey. This is supposedly a NATO ally, formerly a good relationship with Israel. That seems to have gone by the wayside now. Talk about how Turkey has been really, to say the least, not a positive influence in the region under the Erdogan regime.
I'll take it a step further. I think that Turkey is now the first NATO member that also qualifies as a state sponsor of terrorism. Just to put things in perspective, first of all, you have a presence of Hamas in that country that just simply shouldn't be there. That is the largest external headquarters for Hamas. If you remember the 2014 war between Israel and Hamas, that rocket war, it was launched by the killing of those 3 teens in the West Bank. That was planned and financed out of Turkey. Number 2, look at what's happened in Syria. The ISIS and Al-Qaeda problem that has overtaken that country, it is largely due to the lax border policies of Turkey. There is a 550-mile border between Turkey and Syria, and the Turks left it wide open. And then on top of that, you've got the Iran problem that they have going on over there, where they helped Iran evade sanctions. Right at the height of that nuclear standoff that we had between 2012 and 2015, they allowed Iran to move roughly $20 billion worth of cash and gold. That's with a B, billion. That is it is the largest sanctions evasion scheme that we've seen in modern history, and the Turks did this on behalf of the Iranians.
Thanks again to Jonathan Schanzer for joining us. Folks, be sure to check out his great work at FDD. Well, coming up after the break, my final thoughts from right here in Washington, D.C., featuring the one and only Pastor John Hagee. Why should you join us here in D.C. this July? Pastor Hagee has a few thoughts that you'll want to hear. The stakes are high, folks. Stick around.
David Friedman has made history as the first ambassador to serve at the new U.S. Embassy in Jerusalem. He plays a pivotal role in the U.S.-Israel relationship, and he'll be a special guest speaker at CUFI's 2019 Washington Summit. He's gone on to become one of the top voices in the U.S. administration, urging the president to move the U.S. Embassy and recognize Jerusalem as the eternal capital of the Jewish state.
Tammy and I welcome you to the opening and dedication of the United States Embassy in Jerusalem, Israel.
CUFI is thrilled to announce that he'll be speaking at our 2019 CUFI Washington Summit during the National Night to Honor Israel. You won't want to miss this historic opportunity to hear from Ambassador Friedman and our many other special guests in person. Register now to attend the CUFI Washington Summit on July 8th and 9th.
And welcome back to the Watchman from Washington, D.C. As we wrap up our special 2-part series here from the nation's capital, I thought it would be a good idea to go back to Pastor John Hagee. Look, you saw him earlier in the show. He's our founder and chairman at Christians United for Israel. Some of you might be asking, why should I join you and Pastor Hagee in Washington, D.C. on July 7th, 8th, and 9th? Just a few short weeks away. Here's Pastor John Hagee.
Christians say, oh, I love Israel. Then do something to demonstrate it. Put feet to your speech and come to Washington, D.C., July the 7th, 8th, and 9th. Be energized by the teachings of the Word of God. Be energized by the fellowship that you have with other believers and with the Jewish leaders who are going to be here. If there was ever a time we needed to stand up and speak up and be totally united and demonstrate our unswerving support of the Jewish people and the state of Israel, it's right now, July 7th, 8th, and 9th.
Folks, again, the CUFI Washington Summit is July 7th, 8th, and 9th, 2019, just a few short weeks away. There is still time to register. Go to cufi.org. You can get the special Watchman discount. Attend the summit for just $75. $75 to raise your voice, to make your voice heard here in Washington, D.C., where it matters. We'll get a chance to lobby and advocate for a strong Israel, for a strong America, face to face with elected officials right here on Capitol Hill. Not only that, you'll hear from Pastor John Hagee. You'll hear from Ambassador David Friedman, the U.S. Ambassador to Israel and the first U.S. Ambassador to serve at our embassy in Jerusalem. We'll also have nationally syndicated talk radio host Dennis Prager, leading members of Congress, and a very special guest from the Trump administration who you will not want to miss. And of course, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu will deliver a live satellite address to our CUFI Washington Summit. If you want to make a difference for Israel, for the U.S.-Israel relationship in these Bible times in which we are living, join us. Join our movement here at Christians United for Israel and join us right here in Washington, D.C. to make your voice heard. Folks, this is a rare and unique opportunity to be face to face with leading members of Congress to tell them exactly how you feel when it comes to passing strong pro-Israel and pro-American legislation that advocates for our national security. And we will raise our voices July 7th, 8th, and 9th. Go to cufi.org and join us. And thanks for joining us these past 2 weeks here in Washington, D.C. I hope to see you a few weeks from now at the summit. But until then, God bless you. And remember, never hold your peace.